They thought Hue would fall in hours, but instead, 26 days of street-to-street carnage turned this ancient city into the deadliest urban battlefield the Marines had seen since World War II. Welcome back, warriors. Today we are taking you inside one of the most brutal and transformative battles in American military history. A fight where every street became a maze of death. Every rooftop hid an enemy, and every inch of ground was paid for with blood. This is the unbelievable true story of the Battle of Hue City. The 26-day war that shattered illusions, changed American strategy, and proved the unbreakable spirit of U.S. Marines. If you're new to the channel and you love real war legends, battlefield documentaries, and untold military history, hit subscribe, join the mission, and let's roll into the fire. January 1968. Vietnam had been burning for years, but the city of Hue was different. It was ancient, peaceful, deeply spiritual, home of emperors, temples, universities, monks, festivals. Even in the chaos of war, Hue was treated like a historical sanctuary. And with the Lunar New Year celebrations, Tet approaching, American forces expected calm. So when the night of January 30th arrived, Hue was glowing with lanterns. Firecrackers popped. Families prepared meals. Children chased each other through narrow alleyways. American soldiers relaxed, believing the tradition of holiday ceasefires would hold. But beneath that celebration was a storm, hidden in the countryside, in the jungles, and even inside Hue itself were thousands of North Vietnamese Army, NVA and Viet Cong fighters, waiting, watching, preparing. They had spent months infiltrating the city disguised as peasants, workers, monks, even students. Their weapons were hidden in coffins, rice carts, and funerals. Hue wasn't just a target, it was the centerpiece of the largest coordinated enemy attack of the war. Just before dawn on January 31st, the quiet exploded. In a matter of minutes, more than 10,000 NVA and Viet Cong troops swept into Hue. Mortars pounded American positions. Rockets slammed into homes. Government buildings fell instantly. Bridges were taken. Police stations overrun. Entire neighborhoods turned into enemy fortresses overnight. U.S. Marines nearby were stunned. Their commanders couldn't believe the reports. Hue wasn't supposed to be attacked. Intelligence had insisted the NVA was weak. But now the enemy controlled 90% of the city within hours. For the Marines, this wasn't just another fight. This was a battle they had never trained for. Urban warfare, block by block, room by room, in a city that had suddenly become the most dangerous maze on Earth. When the first Marine units entered Hue on January 31st, they expected to push the enemy out quickly. The fog of early morning still hung low, mixing with smoke from burning buildings. The perfume river silently split the city in two. Nothing seemed unusual until the first shot cracked across the street. A Marine radio man dropped instantly, a single bullet through the helmet. Sniper. Then came another, and another. Suddenly, the air filled with gunfire from rooftops, balconies, windows, sewer grates, everywhere. Marines sprinted for cover but found none. The NVA had turned Hue into a kill box, and every approach into the city was covered with overlapping fields of fire. Machine gun bursts slammed into walls, shattering concrete. RPGs screamed down narrow streets. Even Marines who dove behind vehicles found no safety. Snipers fired through windshields. The enemy was dug in with mathematical precision. Buildings that looked abandoned hid entire platoons of soldiers. A seemingly quiet alleyway was rigged with explosives. Courtyards, temples, hospitals, all were fortresses now. The NVA used civilians as shields, complicating every attack and slowing every advance. Marines quickly learned an ugly truth. Moving forward even 10 feet meant fighting a war inside a war. Every house had to be cleared, every window scanned, every doorway approached like a potential grave. By the end of that first day, the Marines realized they weren't dealing with guerrillas. These were disciplined, well-trained, heavily armed NVA regulars, and they were ready to fight to the last man. The Marines weren't just entering a city, they were entering the jaws of a trap. The next days brought a level of combat unseen since World War II. Marines had to reinvent urban warfare on the spot. Open streets were death zones, so they blasted holes through walls and moved from house to house like termites chewing through concrete. Grenades were used more than bullets. Entire blocks were reduced to rubble just to push forward a few meters. Buildings were cleared multiple times because NVA soldiers tunneled back inside after the Marines moved on. Snipers were the biggest threat. Many were positioned in ancient pagodas and university towers, using the height to control hundreds of yards. They fired with deadly accuracy, dropping Marines who exposed themselves for even a second. One sniper held up an entire company for hours until a tank was brought in to demolish the entire building. Worse, the weather was turning the battle into hell. Rain-soaked uniforms, mud clung to boots. The smell of death mixed with smoke from burning homes. Many Marines went days without sleep or food, surviving on adrenaline and raw instinct, and every inch of ground was paid for with blood. Some companies lost half their men in a single day. Medics sprinted under fire to drag wounded onto doors used as stretchers. Still, they pushed forward, street by street, floor by floor, door by door. Hue wasn't just a battle anymore, it was a grinder. While Marines fought on the southern half of the city, the northern half, the Citadel, was an even deadlier nightmare. Enclosed by 30-foot stone walls and a massive moat. The Citadel was an ancient imperial palace the size of a small town. And now, it was the NVA's headquarters, a fortress within a fortress. To take it, Marines would have to cross open ground under machine gun fire, scale walls under sniper fire, and fight through defenses the NVA had prepared for months. The first assault was pure chaos. Rain turned the fields into mud traps. Machine guns swept across the moat like scythes. Marines crawled on their stomachs, dragging wounded with them. Once inside the outer wall, the fighting intensified. The Citadel was filled with courtyards, gardens, tunnels, bunkers, ancient buildings, and thick stone structures that could absorb direct tank fire. Every few feet was another ambush, another sniper, another machine gun nest. South Vietnamese ARVN troops fought bravely alongside the Marines, storming bunkers and retaking buildings that had turned into fortifications. Together they fought yard by yard, sometimes gaining only a few meters a day. The NVA defended the Citadel with fanatical determination. They refused to retreat even when outnumbered and outgunned. Some units fought until only 2 or 3 men remained alive. Others staged nighttime counterattacks, appearing like ghosts in the rain. After weeks of grinding combat, after thousands of rounds fired and hundreds wounded, the Marines broke through the inner defenses. The final stand came at the Imperial Palace flag tower. For hours, the NVA held their ground. Finally, U.S. Marines raised the South Vietnamese flag once again over the Citadel, a moment broadcast around the world. Hue had cost too much, but the Citadel was theirs. By late February, the enemy was collapsing. After nearly a month of constant fighting, the NVA could no longer hold the shattered ruins of Hue. Food was gone. Ammunition was depleted. Their dead filled the streets. On February 24, 1968, the last pockets of resistance were eliminated. Hue was secure, but the victory was hollow. More than 200 American Marines and soldiers had died, and nearly 2,600 were wounded. South Vietnamese troops suffered heavy losses. Thousands of civilians were killed, many executed by the NVA in mass killings discovered after the battle. And the city? 80% of it lay in ruins. Homes, temples, universities, and destroyed. Yet the Marines had done what many thought impossible. They took back an entire city from a massive enemy force entrenched in the most defensible terrain imaginable. Their grit, courage, and refusal to back down became legend. But Hue City did something else. It shattered America's belief that the war was nearly won. It exposed intelligence failures, strategic miscalculations, and the overwhelming strength of the Tet Offensive. The world saw footage of Marines fighting block to block. Families saw their sons covered in mud and blood. Politicians saw a war spiraling out of control. Hue City wasn't just a battle. It was the moment the Vietnam War changed forever. In the aftermath of Hue, military scholars called it one of the most intense, complex, and devastating urban battles in American history. Marines who fought there said it was unlike anything they had ever seen. No jungle, no rice paddies, no helicopter insertions. Just walls, bullets, rubble, and death around every corner. Urban warfare training in the U.S. was rewritten because of Hue. Strategy shifted, tactics evolved, but the greatest legacy came from the men themselves. Marines who fought in Hue forged unbreakable bonds. They remembered the brothers who fell in courtyards, on stairwells, behind crumbling walls. They remembered the smell of cordite, the ringing of RPGs, the endless echo of sniper fire. For many, Hue became the defining moment of their lives. The battle that proved the limits of human endurance and the power of American determination. Hue City stands today rebuilt, peaceful, beautiful, but beneath its streets lies a memory carved into history. A memory of Marines who walked into hell and refused to die there.